tonight we jump back. We were on Numbers 3 about a month ago, and we finished The Chosen, season 4. Now we're on Numbers 4. Now up till this time, we've gone through and learned of the census of all of Israel, every tribe, and how it was laid out. He told us all those different things. And then they took a census of the priests. Okay, that was last one that we did, Numbers 3. This is Numbers 4, and it also has a census, but it's also the duties of the priests. Okay, so Numbers 4, 1 through 3, those that are fit for service. And the Lord spake unto Moses and said unto Aaron, saying, Take the sum of the sons of Kohath from among the sons of Levi, after their families, by the house of their fathers, from 30 years old and upward, even until 50 years old, all that enter into the host, to do the work in the tabernacle of the congregation. Kohath is one. If you want to turn, okay, at the very back, you have a little diagram. Kohath is in the middle. Levi had 3 sons, okay? Gershom, Kohath, and Merari. Merari. So of those 3, of Kohath, okay, go down one, that's Amram. That's Moses, Aaron, and Miriam's line. So they come from the tribe of, or not tribe, but from the family of Kohath. So he's saying all the priests are from Aaron's side. Okay? Question? Can you hear me? It's ringing. Is it ringing too much for you? I turn it down. Okay. So that's just showing how that they are coming down. And now we're going to deal tonight with those 3 different family groups from Levi. Now before, when they were going through all the different census, Levi was left out because they weren't soldiers. Their duty was to the tabernacle and to take care of the tabernacle. Let me turn this down. Thank you. So because of that, they numbered everybody from a certain age upward. I believe it was 20 years. Have to go back and look. 20 years and upward. This one's different. This one wants them to number them, all the men, and you can say the working men here, from 30 to 50 years. That's the age that they serve as this time frame where they serve in the tabernacle, to do their duties of the tabernacle. Now, back in Leviticus, we had a number of 25 years. And you say, what's the difference? Well, 5 years they have to train. Okay? They start into the tabernacle, they start learning their duties, and for 5 years they follow somebody learning what's happening in the particular whatever it is. We're going to discuss that here in just a little bit. So they have to learn all this, all the different priests. Whatever their job is, they're going to learn it for 5 years. And then after that, when they turn 30, then they can start serving in it. And supposedly they will replace the people that go from 50 to 51 as they move out.
Was there such thing as what's called retirement?
Well, that's it. It's 50. It's 50 for them. That's retirement. Now, that doesn't mean they stop working.
Oh.
They still are a priest, part of the priest. They still get part of what the priests get. The priests get some offerings. They also get the hides that they can sell from the sheep and the goats.
So does it mean
whatever.
The same as we say at 70 we retire?
Right.
Okay.
They retire from active service because, as you see down through here, it's pretty rigorous what they had to do. Now, this is this time, okay? And what I mean by that is this is when they first put up the tabernacle. So from here till Solomon's time, this is the way they did it. In Solomon's time, they went from a tabernacle that's temporary to a temple. Well, the temple's not going to move. So some of the things that they have to do, as we read through here, they don't have to do that anymore because they're not tearing it down, moving it. They don't have all these different parts and pieces they have to keep track of. So they found other things for them to do. Okay? And that's later on. This is what God gave Moses to tell this group of priests what to do. Now they, as they went through this, they had a general count of the men. They said of the family of Kohath, back in Numbers, it was 8,600 males. Now this second count was to see who were of the age to serve, like we said, in the tabernacle. And typically, the way they report a family, Gershom, Kohath, Merari, Gershom would have been the firstborn. And we're seeing Kohath was the second child. Typically, back then in their service, the firstborn was the one that inherited everything. But Jacob and Esau was older. Jacob got the blessing. He did it deceitfully, but he got it. There's two or three different things that happened where the firstborn didn't always get. God didn't choose always the firstborn, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the reason for this elevation of the second son over his older brother seems to be based on the sovereign selection of God, the Lord, and the favored work he gives his family in proximity to the holiest saints. Of his family, Kohath, Moses and Aaron was taken. Moses, and it may have been because Moses was able to listen to God and say, my people, I want my people out of there, and Moses listened. So he decided your family is going to be put above the firstborn. Okay? We don't know exactly, but that's some of the reasoning that happens. Here it tells us God favored Isaac over Ishmael. Ishmael was firstborn. Jacob over Esau. Joseph over Reuben. Moses over Aaron. Think of that. Why wasn't Moses? Why was Aaron not the one to lead them out? Well, it wasn't. It was Moses. And one of the most familiar, David. He was the smallest one. He was the last one. And he wasn't taken. God chose David. It all depends on the person. So among these that were of the tabernacle is 30 to 50, like I said, was the age that they took for them. Turn the page. Said this is when they believed the prime of life for a man was between 30 and 50 at that time. They didn't live as long as we did, as we do now, some of us, and it just, life was a lot harder. And then it goes through and reverts back to Numbers 8 and 24, where it first said the service started at 25. Well, that first 5 years was learning. Okay? And it goes through in the next little part, Adam Clark tells that they'd take up with somebody. They would learn from an older person what they were supposed to do. We do that today. We talked about that in Sunday school Sunday. Some mentoring is done. Some teaching is done at that time. The young people, they need teaching. None of this is anything. You didn't know how to drive a car when you first was born. You had to learn. You didn't know how to read. Somebody had to teach you. So this is the very same thing. Numbers 4 through 14, Brother Emerson. You want to read?
This shall be the service of the sons of Korah in the tabernacle of the congregation about the most holy things. And when the camp setteth forward, Aaron shall come and his sons, and they shall take down the shall spread over it a cloth of holy blue, and shall put in the staves thereof. And upon the table of the showbread they shall spread a cloth of blue, and put thereon the dishes, and the spoons, and the bowls, and the covers to cover with it. And the continual bread shall be thereon. And they shall spread upon them a scarlet, and a cover cover the same with the covering of badger skin, and shall put in the staves thereof. They shall take a cloth of blue, and a cover of the candlesticks of the light, and of his hand, and of his tongs, and of his snuff dish, and all old vessels thereof wherewith they minister unto it, oil vessels. And they shall put it into all the vessels thereof with a covering of badger skin, and shall put it upon a bar. And upon the golden altar they shall spread the cloth of blue, and cover it with coverings of badger skin, and shall put the staves thereof. And they shall take all the instruments of ministry wherewith they minister in the sanctuary, and put them in the cloth of blue, and cover them with a covering of badger skins, and shall put them on a bar. And they shall take away the ashes from the altar, and spread a purple cloth thereon, and they shall put upon it all the vessels thereof, wherewith they minister about it, even the censers, the flesh hooks, and the shovels, and the basins, and all the vessels of the altar, and they shall spread upon it a covering of badger skin, and put staves in.
Okay.
Just that verse alone tells you one that had to study for 5 years.
Yeah, they had to learn all this and which part went where and how they covered it and all these things. One of the things says the service of the Kohath in the tabernacle congregation. Now, they don't do this. It says, when the camp settleth, come forward, Aaron shall come and his sons. So now we're talking about, even though all these brothers, these 3 brothers are all considered Levites, really Aaron is the one. His branch is the one that does the offerings, that they go into the Holy of Holies, they do all these things. All the others of Kohath, what they do is they move this stuff. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the sons of Aaron, nobody can go in there. Okay, first of all, God's presence is there. What happens when the tabernacle gets ready to move?
They had to take it all up.
They did, but before that, how'd they know when to take it all up? Yep, God would take his presence, the fire by night and the cloud by day. He would raise up, and Moses would indicate, hey, God told us he's ready to go. Let's go. Make preparation. So, since God's presence is no longer in the Holy of Holies, more others other than the high priest can go into the Holy of Holies. That's when they go in, the ones that are appointed here, and they put these things on. They put these coverings. They're covering them up. 1, so nobody will see them. 2, so they won't get wet, won't get damaged, all these things. These veils that they put on, the badger skins were, like we talked about back in Leviticus, it's something very sturdy. Some people say that badger skin is not really a proper name for it. It's more like a porpoise hide or something like that that's rain repellent, because you're translating Hebrew over. We don't know exactly what it was, but just like cowhide, cowhide will shed water pretty good. And some of these animals, like a polar bear, the water just sheds off. He jumps in the water and he gets wet and he kind of shakes himself off. Ducks, stuff, but they're coated with oil, so it keeps it off. So that's what they're doing. They cover these things up so they can transport it.
They cover them first with the cloth of blue.
First a call for blue. Now sometimes it's different. Sometimes it's a blue and then sometimes it's a scarlet, and it usually ends up with a blue on top, but each one's different. That's why you have to pay attention to what you're doing. And as I'm sure they're just not throwing something over it. I imagine they measured it out and these things fit perfectly across it. And it talks about in there a little bit, they put the staves in there in. Well, I always thought that was a misnomer. Why are they putting staves in? Because staves were always in for the Ark of the Covenant. Well, it makes sense now, what I read from one commentator, they pull the staves out, throw the covering on, and put the staves back in. Okay, because they got holes. I just died. My battery died. Because they got holes in there to put it through. So, let me turn this off and we'll change batteries.
And so they shall take down the covering veil and cover the ark of the testimony with it. The ark of the covenant was holy, so it could only be covered and prepared for transport by the priest.
Right.
The priest first covered it with a veil, and that separated the holy place from the most holy places.
Right. They took that veil out.
They covered the veil with badger skins and finally with cloth entirely in blue.
Yeah. They had a special way of doing it. And only certain people can do it here again.
I think it's interesting they had it down to like perfect.
Well, that's what God gave them to do, so they were just following God's orders.
And then they would insert poles.
Yeah, whenever they got finished, they would take care of that. Some of them didn't have poles. The big candles.
They couldn't touch them with human hands.
Right, because they didn't want to, because later on we find out that Uriah, when he reached forth when it was being moved, he touched it and he died.
Oh.
Yeah. So even though the presence of God had been lifted up, these things are still, they didn't want anybody seeing it, first of all, because it represents God. It's not like he's hiding it per se, but they can't stand the glory of it. They can't stand what. Now, when they made it, somebody had to make it, so they knew what they made it out of and how it was done and how it was formed. But since then, it's gone forward, and as they move forward with this, it takes a big effort to move it.
No wonder they had to be trained.
Yeah.
They had to be exact.
Had to do all this. And I've read how many times they moved. It wasn't something that they did every day, or even once a year. They would move to a place and stay for a long while, and then they'd go and move again. So, it may be, they did this over 40 years. So.
God had it all planned out.
Yeah, so, if I did it, and then 5 years later somebody else wanted to do it again, I may have already turned 55 and somebody else would have to learn it. They only did it once, so they had to learn it and learn it well.
And then they had to remember it maybe a year later.
That's right. Yeah, the first thing they did was take down the veil that was in front and put that in, they say over it, but it may have been, they protected the ark with that veil. Okay? Somehow. I'm not sure how it is. And then they go through and put all the different parts on it. The ark was carried by poles. Like you said, there was rings. We read about that in Leviticus. They put rings in the sides of it, and then you put the poles on it. The ark wasn't to be carried on a cart or anything. Any of this was not supposed to be carried, well, not any of it, but most of it was not to be carried on a cart. It was to be carried by hand. And not touching it, they had these poles that they carried. And it may be, to me, it may be another thing, those poles, me thinking, I didn't read this in the commentary, but those poles were covered with gold and everything too. So it's like, we take these precious gold ones out, we put them in their own place, and then we get the wooden poles that we can carry them with.
Wow.
I don't know. It could have. To me, that's what makes sense. But remember what was in the holy, or well, in the tabernacle itself. It's the whole tabernacle. Had the showbread, had the altar, had the burnt incense
It had
altar.
all the utensils, like pitchers and all that.
Yeah, they had all that. The snuff dishes. That's when they was putting out the lights and changing them. Yeah, everything that they used, they had, and most of them was made either out of gold or brass or silver. It's all told to us. We read it all back when we was going through Leviticus.
Yeah.
Said the only thing that was missing in this list is the bronze laver, and that was what was outside of the tabernacle itself. It was fairly large. It's where they would actually bathe.
Oh.
So, but it says in the Samaritan quote Bible, Pentateuch, the first 5 books, and the Septuagint, which is the Latin version of it, the bronze laver was put at verse 14. It's just missing in the Hebrew text for whatever reason. I don't know. So once all that's covered, now the sons of Kohath come in and they bear it. All right? You want to read Iris for us, or?
I'll try.
Okay.
And
15
when
to,
Aaron,
sorry, go ahead.
and when Aaron and his sons have made an end of covering the sanctuary and all the vessels of the sanctuary, as the camp is to set forward, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to bear it. But they shall not touch any holy thing, lest they die. These things are the burden of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of the congregation, and to the office of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, pertaineth the oil for the light, and the sweet incense, and the daily meat offering, and the anointing oil, and the oversight of the tabernacle, and all of that therein is in the sanctuary and in the vessels thereof. And the Lord spake unto Moses and said unto Aaron, saying, Cut ye not off the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among the Levites, but thus do unto them that they may live and not die, when they approach unto the most holy things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint them every one to his service and to his burden, but they shall not go in to see when the holy things are covered up, lest they die.
Okay. So this is where it goes back. Even though it's their job, these Kohathites, to move this stuff, they can't see any of it. So Aaron's sons, they have to go in and cover everything up and get it prepared for them.
Cool. He was Aaron's great-grandfather, wasn't he?
Right, right. So it's one of those things. You have to look, and that's where it comes back. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it does make sense, but and then they say that instead of going down Eleazar, which is Aaron's 3rd son, he's the one in charge of taking off. So they go through this, and Aaron and Eleazar, they do their business that they have to do, and then they start telling. So what happens is each one of the people, they have a job. You are on this side, you 4 are on this side of this, and you 4 are on this side, or whatever it is, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to carry this, the ark, or you're going to carry this, the incense table, or the showbread table, or you're going to carry the menorahs, the candles. You're going to carry the oil. Somebody's got to carry not just what the furnishings was, but what they had too. Like I said, the tools, all that stuff, the oil, the incense, showbread, the things that make everything that they have that is in the temple that they use for the temple, they have to carry. And Kohathites are the ones that actually doing that. Okay, those the ones that are them.
They gotta be strong.
Yeah. Well, it goes through here and it tells again here on the page 5, it says the oil for the light, the sweet incense, the daily grain offering, the anointing oil, the oversight of all the tabernacle and all that's in it, and its furnishings. So these were what was over it, and Eleazar was the one that appointed under him to, set all this about, to get it all taken care of. So everybody had a job.
Yeah.
And it may have been the least things, and you'll see that again here in a little bit.
Nobody was to do their job until the one before them
Had to do their job, that's right, because it comes back and says they can't do this. They were only transporting it.
only after they had already been fixed to go, right?
Mm-hmm. So even though they were appointed to do this, they couldn't do it until they were said, okay, now you can go in and move. Eleazar had to tell them, now we're ready to move. So then because the people were afraid. I mean, they told them, don't touch this unless you'll die. And they had to do it in the manner that they were taught. Here again, they had to bear that up, and most of the time they would put it on their shoulders. Well, you don't want two of them in front lifted up, and the other two's not even got a hold of it yet. They start sliding down and runs it. You got to do everything in coordination. Okay, verse 21 and 23. You want to read that for us? Yeah. Yeah, right there.
And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, take also the son of Gershon throughout the houses of their fathers, by their families, from 30 years old upward until 50 years old, thou shalt number them, all that enter into perform the service, to do the work in the tabernacle of the congregation.
Okay. So they're naming them. This is the Gershonites. Okay? Yeah. So that's the first brother. Okay? If you look back here, the Kohathites had their job. Now they're going back to the Gershonites, and they had their job. So we're getting ready. Of them, they had 7,500 people.
Wow.
The previous one, I think, was 8,600. I have to go back and look. But they had 8,600. But once we don't have the census data yet. Those that are 30 to 50 is only half of that. You go back, we'll see it here in just a minute. So they only have about half of the number of the people, because the others are either younger or older. Now that doesn't mean they don't have jobs. They do have jobs, but theirs is to take care of other business that they were led. These 30 to 50 are the ones that are following after and actually taking care of that. It says this, the way that it reads, the words to perform the service in the margin are literally to war the warfare. We said they're not warriors, they don't go out and fight, but yet they are doing their portion of it. This is their war. They have to do it and do it correctly. Otherwise, a lot of people get in trouble, not just them. You want to read the next one, 24 through 28, Bertha?
Okay. This is the service of families of Gershonites, to serve and for burden. And they shall bear the curtains of the tabernacle and the tabernacle of the congregation. His covering and the covering of the badger skin that is above upon it, and the hanging for the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the hanging of the court, and the hanging for the door of the gate of the court, which is by the tabernacle and by the altar round about, and their cords and all the instruments of their service and all that is made for them, so shall they serve. At the appointment of Aaron and his sons shall be all the and you shall appoint upon them in charge of all their burdens. This is a service of the families of the son of Gershonites in the tabernacle of the congregation, and their courage shall be under the hand of, what's the name?
Ithamar.
Who?
Ithamar.
Ithamar, and the son of Aaron and the priest. And you read that real fast, you will be confused.
Yep. Now, if you look, Eleazar is over one part. Ithamar is the second son of Aaron. He's over these guys. Okay? Now, you said, what about these first two? They're dead. Don't you remember? They offered profane fire. And God killed them. So those first two brothers of Aaron are not around. Goes back to Leviticus, it tells you right there. So Eleazar and Ithamar are the two that's in charge of the Gershonites and the Kohathites. And these guys, the Gershonites, they take care of all of it. Now, the only thing that's taken down is the veil between the Holy of Holies and the holy place. That's in the altar, covered up. All the other curtains, we call them curtains, or walls, that's what these guys take care of. They take down the roof, the covering, the badger skin that's over that. There's like 3 roofs, remember? There's a leather one, and then a badger skin one, and then a red one, and then they take all that down, and then they take all the side panels down, the curtains that hang around the sides. They take the front of the tabernacle. There's a veil in front of the tabernacle where you go into the holy place. Okay, so that's different than the other veil. They take it down and they fold it up and they put it in the place where it goes. Outside of the tabernacle, remember there was a walled off place to keep people from coming up to the tabernacle. All those curtains
Question.
are taken down.
They were able to protect them from rain and the weather?
Yeah, that's what this is doing. And I'm sure they did it in a way, they take it down, and first thing you take off would be the outside one. That's the one, the badger skin that they talk about.
Okay.
So they put that down. I'm sure they put it down. They put all these curtains in it, and then they put that stuff on top. It's what I would envision it. Either wrap it up or whatever and put it on top. And if you go back to Leviticus, when they put them down, each side was made up of like 5 curtains, so it wasn't solid. So they had like 5 curtains. It was so tall and so wide, so they take that one down, fold it up, put that one down, fold it up, and then put the top of the ark on top of it to keep the rain and everything off of it.
That was to protect the inner.
Yeah, the inner parts of it, the linen parts, what you call the linen. Same thing with the outside part of it. And then you also have the ropes, because the tabernacle was held up. We're going to get to the boards here in a minute, but the boards were held up, but they, just like a tent, they would have the tent ropes going down to the ground and stakes in the ground also ever so often, so they had to take all that down. That was their job too, to take care of all the ropes and all the outside material from that.
Didn't think it'd take all day long.
It'd take a while. They didn't say how long it took,
No.
but it'd take a long time to take care of all this. See, down here in the very second to the last paragraph says covering a badger skin. It's differently rendered in different versions. The Revised Version says goat skin. The New English Bible says porpoise hide. Said the Hebrew word actually is rendered sea cow. Okay? So a word in Arabic, which is very similar to Hebrew, is the word for dolphin. So they was thinking maybe it's a porpoise hide or some kind of hide of a sea cow. That would be pretty waterproof because they're in the water all the time.
Goat skin.
Could be goat skin, could be, we don't know exactly what it was. So Aaron and his sons, which is Ithamar, is the one that takes care of all of the Gershonites. And Eleazar takes care of the Kohathites. Ithamar takes care of the Gershonites. So those two is under the authority of them. Now we get to the last of the three brothers of Levi, that's Merari. As for the sons of Merari, thou shalt number them after their families, by the household of their fathers, from 30 years old and upward, even unto 50 years old shalt thou number them. Every one that entereth into the service to do the work of the tabernacle of the congregation. Now, that's here, back in there, they had 6,200 people, males, okay, that was in this family. In just a minute, we're going to see that they had less than the other two total number of men, but they had more proportionally because they had more available 30 to 50 men. We'll see that in just a few minutes. Numbers 31, 31 and 33, Brother Anderson.
And this is the charge of their burden according to their service in the tabernacle of the congregation, the boards of the tabernacle and the bars thereof, and the pillars thereof, and the sockets thereof, and the pillars of the court round about, their sockets, and their pins, and their cords, and all their instruments, with all their service by name ye shall reckon the instruments of charge of their burden. This service of the family of the sons of Merari, according to all their service, and in the tabernacle of the congregation under the hand of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest.
Okay. So what we're left is, and they're kind of, as they're taking it down, we're seeing it as they can't take the boards down first. They got to take the roof off first, and then they got to take the curtains down, and what's left is the boards. It's just like if you took this church down, you wouldn't take these beams down the first thing. That would be the last thing you'd take down.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it is there. The last thing that's left standing is the boards that holds up the walls that's on the four sides. So they take those down. How are those held up? There's a bar, remember? There's a bar running through them that they've got clasped on. They take those bars down. On each bar, it's a hand breadth, so it's something like maybe 6 inches under each, board. Under each board, they had 2 sockets that were milled to hold that. It wasn't touching the ground, okay? It had silver sockets that they set in. So they had to get those down. And so somebody had to count the boards. Somebody had to count the sockets so they didn't leave one. Somebody had to make sure. And as we get into this, each one of these was assigned to a person. You get 5 sockets, you get 5 sockets, you get 5 sockets. That person, that's their job, okay? And these boards and all the other stuff that they had upon them. Here it says, these boards, the pillars, and all the precious metal of it, because these boards were covered with gold.
Yeah.
All right? The tabernacle weighed about 19,000 pounds.
Oh.
That's a lot of weight. And that's why this group proportionally needs to be more to be able to handle this.
Wow.
Okay? And these, in my opinion, doesn't tell us, but in these, I'm sure they probably had a cart. They had certain carts that they had to put these on to carry it. They may have carried them by hand. I don't know. It doesn't say it, but I would have thought they would put these on carts. It says, because these items were small and numerous, each Merarite was responsible for a particular item so that none of them would be lost. When you're putting something together at Christmas or whenever, and you like, they gave me one less screw, I need one more screw. What happened to those, And you counted them out. If you're like me, I'm an engineer. I'll count the screws out as I pour them out of the bag. So if I need 10 of them and there's 10 there, and then when I get there I'm losing one, I'm like, okay, I lost it. Or no, they didn't send it to me. I don't have to call them and get another screw or something like that. They had to go down to that level to make sure that everything was not lost. These included sockets, pegs, and the cords that bound them together, the ropes Because inside, remember, they had the ropes on the boards to help hold them stable also. And I'll read this last one because it's a little long. 34 through 48. And Moses and Aaron and the chief of the congregation numbered the sons of the Kohathites after their families and after the house of their fathers, from 30 years old and upward, even to 50 years old, everyone that entereth into the service for the work in the tabernacle of the congregation. And those that were numbered of them by their families were 2,750. Now let's go back where we're talking about the first group, the Kohathites. And it says, I read it somewhere. I was thinking it was 8,600 that they had. It's close to that, I'm pretty sure, because it's 25%. They only had 25% of their people, the men, that was working age, that would be the working age.
Yeah, but they had, younger ones.
They had young ones and they had older ones. So they had a lot, but it was the most of these three. Okay, this one's 8,600, the next one's like 7,600, and then the smallest one's like 6,600. Okay, but these two, the first two, only have a certain amount. They only have a certain percentage. So they don't have near as many people actually working, doing this work. These were that were numbered of the family of the Kohathites, all that might do service in the tabernacle of the congregation, which Moses and Aaron did number according to the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And those that were numbered of the sons of Gershon, throughout their families, and by the houses of their fathers, from 30 years old and upward, even into 50 years old, everyone that entered into the service for the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, even those that were numbered of them throughout their families by the houses of their fathers, were 2,600. Again, about 25%, 25-30. These are all they that were numbered of the families of the sons of Gershon, of all that might do service in the tabernacle of the congregation, whom Moses and Aaron did number according to the commandment of the Lord. And those that were numbered of the families of the sons of Merari, throughout their families, by the house of their fathers, from 30 years old and upward, even unto 50 years old, everyone that entereth into the service for the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, even those that were numbered of them after their families, were 3,200. See, they only had 6,600 people, so almost half of them could work. The others, they didn't have near that many. All of those that were numbered, let's get down a little bit. All of those that were numbered of the Levites, whom Moses and Aaron, the chief of Israel, numbered after their families and after the household of the fathers, from 30 years old even up to 50 years old, everyone that came to do the service of the ministry and the service of the burden in the tabernacle of the congregation, even those that were numbered with them, were 8,540. So that's the total working group, 8,580. 2,600 was in the first group, roughly 2,700 in the next group, and about 3,000 in the next group.
I love that thought, going even back to the purpose before that, where they mentioned they were humble and everyday things. Even though you may have just a job of counting the sockets and the pegs, if they wasn't there,
you were in trouble.
I mean, and they couldn't finish the work if all the pegs.
No, it's like, give me that 3/4 inch socket. Where's that? It wasn't that yours, Junior, to take care of? You know, where's that? I need it. Each one of them had a job. Now this is while they moved. They didn't move that many times, but this was their job that they had to do while they were moving. Now they had other jobs. When they were doing the tabernacle part, they each all had their different jobs too. But this was the particular ones for here. And here's the
Because
summary of them.
God was very smart. He didn't want to be lazy.
No,
You know, he had things for them to do.
So here's the breakdown. 2,750 men of Kohathites, 2,630 of the Gershonites, and 3,200 of men between 30 and 50 of the Merari. And then the last scriptures, according to the commandment of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, everyone according to his service and according to his burden. Thus the Lord they numbered of him, as the Lord commanded Moses. We see that, I don't know how many times in this verse, as the Lord was commanded Moses to do. Okay? He didn't go out and do it on himself. We see it later on in their history of Judah and Israel, that they did some census on their own. And that got them in trouble. Well, here, they're setting the precedence. When God tells you to, you do it. When God doesn't tell you to, you don't really need to do it. Because what happens is you get caught up in the numbers. We got 100,000 man army, we can take care of anybody. That God didn't want that. He took an army of, what was it, 3,000 down to 300 men. And with those 300 men, he conquered the enemy. That's right.
Not throw it away.
But he didn't. Yeah. So.
I've been studying about the cost of leadership, and I come across there where David census, okay? They took a census when it was supposed to.
That's right.
And there's 3 or 4, reasons or, theories of why.
Right.
But the main reason is God told them not to, okay? And then the plagues came on, and then David got serious with God. And,
right.
The guy was going to give him the threshing floor where it was to build the altar. And he said, I got to pay for it. I got to pay
That's right.
Cost of leadership.
And that was interesting when it said they all had the same DNA code. Not everything was visible as some things are.
Right.
But it also tells, to me, speaking to Jerry, okay, God's word is for a reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? And for us to disobey, there's not only do we suffer when we don't do what God tells us to do, but other people also suffer for our inaccuracy.
Well, it even goes to Paul. He said that everybody has a job to do in the church, not just, it's relevant to the tabernacle back then, but it's also relevant to the church. If your job is to wash the windows, you better do it the way God wants you to. Yeah. You may think the only thing I can do is call people. I'm not contributing to a church or whatever. If God calls you to do that, that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, not everybody's going to be the preacher. Not everybody's going to be the teacher. Not everybody's going to do this or that or the other. Each person that's the way the church works. And no particular member is more important than the other. A lot of the big churches, it gets up in its image and importance and how do I look before people and all this stuff. That's not what God wants. So.
And I won't give any names, but I have a friend that was in this particular huge church for a long time. Very talented.
Mm-hmm.
She asked them over and over and over to use her.
Mm-hmm.
And she described her talents to them. And one of her talents was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
She was at church for 15 years and they didn't bother to ask her to help.
Yeah.
And that upset her. She just finally left the church and said, no, I want to be used and they don't want to use me.
Well, sometimes God uses us in other things. I know when I went to a new church,
she said she didn't hear what it was, but they never asked her for me.
well, I know, but what I'm saying is when I went to a new church, nobody knew me. Pastor didn't know me, nothing. It was different. We was outside of the Church of God because there's no Church of God churches around. And so we just went to church. And we was there.
So huge that you had just a little core group.
Well, we had a group and everything there, but after, 6 months or so, Pastor called me in his office and started questioning me about some stuff. And guess one of the leaders, teachers, wanted to step down, and I was too vocal, I guess, in Sunday school, trying to tell them too much. I mean, just reading and commenting things. And so I became Sunday school teacher right away. I mean, I didn't ask for that. They wanted, pastor wanted me to do that, so that's what I stepped in to do. And they had, to me, they had a teacher, they had somebody who was there, but they didn't want to do it. So, and that's just me. I mean, whatever God wants us to do, we need
Well,
to
she
do
ended
it.
up going to a smaller church, and now she's being used for Christ.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he'll use us if